Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Crane Bay Event Center. Our program will begin shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program will commence in 5 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The program will commence in 1 minute.
Hello, everyone, and good evening, and welcome to the Justice for All Gala. My name is Jeff Brown, and I'm a pastor at College Park Church, and I'll be your MC for the evening. We're so grateful that you all could be here, both in person and those who are with us virtually, to celebrate the Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic's mission to promote justice. In order for everyone to feel comfortable tonight in participating in this gala, we've decided to go hybrid for the first time. So we have some of you in person, and obviously we have others who will join us online. That said, if you're in person, we would ask that you please remember to keep your mask on at all time if you're not taking a sip of your drink or eating some food. Now, this event would not be possible without all of you and our event sponsors. A huge thank you goes to our judge and magistrate level sponsors, Barnes and Thornburg, College Park Church, which I have a privilege of being a pastor at, and also Tabernacle Presbyterian Church. This evening, we also want to recognize and celebrate God's faithfulness in sustaining the work of the clinic throughout the pandemic and using their legal services to help our neighbors flourish. The clinic is striving to break down barriers for clients who face a wide variety of civil legal issues, including housing, reentry for individuals involved in the criminal justice system, tax, domestic violence, and also immigration. They also provide education to help prevent others from getting into legal dilemmas in the first place, if at all possible. Legal problems, as you know, can certainly be a headache for any of us. It's often needed for us to have a lawyer to assist us. Now, this can pose a threat for all of us, and it's hard, as you all know, but that can pose an insurmountable financial burden to those who are low-income individuals. This means that for people living close to the poverty line, justice is not always accessible. In fact, according to a recent study by the Indiana Bar Foundation, a mere 4% of legal issues faced by those in poverty are represented by an attorney. That's 20 times as many attorneys available for Hoosiers. However, that's not those who are low-income Hoosiers. This is why it's so critical for non-for-profit services like the clinic to provide the services that they do and to exist to help those in need. We need to work together to give those who lack access to justice and help to bridge in this gap of those by making legal services available and attainable for all. So we're going to talk about that and discuss that tonight. And as you guys know, we're going to have some speakers here. But first, the clinic is able to provide these services because of those who couldn't have this justice, because of the generosity of supporters like you. Our goal tonight is for this event to raise $125,000, which is roughly 6% of the clinic's operating budget. Funds raised tonight are especially important because they will allow the clinic to meet the needs of those most vulnerable in our society. So during this time, I'm going to ask that you guys to open up your hearts, but also your wallets as we bless those in need. Now, the fact that you're here tonight suggests that you care about the work that the clinic is doing. Before we launch into the rest of the evening, I want to take a moment to share personally for me why biblical justice is important and why the work of the clinic is important as well. So as a Christian and as a pastor, for me personally, I believe that justice for all is a biblical mandate and it's not optional for humanity. Why is that? Because God, the creator of all, demands that justice should be the air we breathe because we've been created in his image. We're called to reflect the character and nature of a just God, and the scripture makes this abundantly clear. Micah says it this way: he has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice and love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Or the New Testament, Arthur James makes it a little more practical, and he gives you an example. He says, religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained for the world. Jesus sums up this teaching by saying, if you want to live this life, which is honoring to God, you can sum it up into two ways. Love the Lord God with all of your being, and when you're doing that, that will lead you to loving your neighbors as yourself. So to be clear, justice for all is primarily a biblical mandate that should motivate every follower of Jesus. Yet secondly, there's another reason why I'm compelled that justice should be for all and should be made available for all those that need it. What's that reason? Well, secondly, if you're a human being, this should come natural to you because we learned it in elementary school. What's the golden rule? Treat others the way you would want to be treated. We desire justice for ourselves, so it is a natural thing for us to desire justice for others. I think about my own family, and we would have been characterized as someone who did not have the same access to justice as others. My mother was a single mom raising two boys on your own, and on Christmas Eve of 2004, my older brother died in a car accident. And in this car accident, we ended up finding out it was a wrongful death, and we needed help, legal services in this time. And my mom, hardworking mom, done the best that she could. As you can imagine, she went through a financial crisis with this, having to get together funds for the funeral and everything, and she didn't even know the first steps of what it meant to find out about dealing with this wrongful death suit. Now, for me, I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, actually on the east side of town. So if you're at all familiar with the east side of Indianapolis, a lot of times, most of the things you'll hear about us is probably the negative things and not the positives. You hear about the low income, you'll hear about gangs and things of that nature, but I want to let you know there's actually a rich history on the east side of Indianapolis. So for us, we talking about legal services. I didn't know a lawyer personally. I couldn't tell you about a family member of mine who was a lawyer, or we didn't have family friends that were lawyers that could help us. So whenever we needed to know something legally, we had to wait to about 12 a.m. It would pop up on the news. If you need lawyer services, call this number. Or if you're old enough, you also remember that we had these big, thick things called the Yellow Book, and on the back of them, it had legal services that you could call as well. So that's what my mom did. She went and looked for legal services by the first thing that was promoted on TV on the Yellow Book. And in doing that, she ended up having this case taken over, but we found out later on that she did not have the justice that was actually needed for my brother. We ended up finding out that the lawyers that helped us ended up getting probably about 6 times the amount of money that my mother received for services. Because if you're in poverty a lot of times, you can't wait until the settlement money comes in because you're trying to struggle day to day with what's going on. So they said, hey, if you sign right here, we'll give you some money that's coming your way anyway, not knowing the interest rate will skyrocket high from the money that she needed. So for me, I'm a human being, I'm standing in front of you, and for you, most likely you're like, well, my heart goes out to you. This is the reason why I said not only is it a biblical mandate, but as a human being, we're asking that your heart should say, would I want to be treated that way as well? Therefore, I want to encourage you to support tonight and know that the work that the clinic is doing is meant to impact not only those who are of faith, but also those who are human beings in need of justice. And with that, I want to pray, and we'll continue on with our night. Dear Heavenly Father, God, we thank you for the work that you've done and the work that you will continue to do. I thank you in your grace that you've put people in this room who have a heart for justice, people who care about their fellow mankind, and people who want to provide access to justice for all because it's what you demand, but it's also what we desire for ourselves. God, I pray for the benefit tonight that we're here at, that you would meet the needs, the goals that we have, but also that people will be impacted as we know we have all been, and we will continue to be based off the call you've given us in your word and in the gospel. So to this end, we pray in Jesus' name, amen. So our hope tonight is that you're going to experience the love of God and the power of his calling to love your neighbors as yourselves. We have an exciting agenda plan that will showcase different sides of the clinic's mission and how they seek to demonstrate the love of Jesus Christ through this work. But before we go any further, I want to introduce the clinic's fearless leader who God has used to guide this organization through the challenges of the pandemic and who has a genuine heart for not only Jesus, but also justice. Please help me in welcoming the Executive Director, Amy Adair Horton.
Well, I just want to say thank you to Jeff. He's a wonderful young man, and we've gotten to know him over the past few months, and thank you for emceeing tonight. So I wanted to welcome all of you to JFA 2021 and say very sincerely, thank you for sharing your evening with us tonight. As Jeff mentioned, my name is Amy, and I joined the clinic in April of 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic. It's been a challenging time, but a wonderful time as well, and God has provided for the clinic throughout. Leading up to that time, God was working on me. I wasn't quite sure what he was doing, but in hindsight, I realized he was leading me to the clinic through a spiritual growth campaign at my church. As I listened to my pastor's messages week after week, God was shifting my mindset, pointing me to work that would focus intently on addressing issues that break the heart of Jesus. I'm so grateful that God led me and nudged me along and to think differently about my career, and he gave me the guts to actually pursue work at the clinic. It was a little intimidating, I have to say, but I'm so glad I pushed the button and sent that application. And I'm really thrilled to be doing work now that has eternal value. And here we are tonight, flash forward about 18 months, here we are together in person and virtually to celebrate Jesus and justice. Over half of our attendees tonight are new to the clinic and have not attended a JFA in the past. So because we have so many first-timers, I'd like to take a moment to introduce you all to the Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic. The clinic was launched in 1994 in response to a sermon by Reverend Frank Kick at Tabernacle Presbyterian Church. He wove a story of two cities in Indianapolis that were very different, and he charged his congregants to give of their time to solve social issues that were plaguing some of the neighborhood. In response, a few attorneys took action. They launched an entirely volunteer-driven effort and worked out of a closet. I'm not kidding, a closet. The clinic became a neighborhood resource at that time. It's come a long way in the past few years, and we now have two offices, one in Indianapolis and one in Fort Wayne, and over 30 staff members. The clinic comes alongside our neighbors, offering free legal aid to thousands of people in neighborhood locations across the city. While we're responsive to our community's changing needs, we provide expertise in areas that disproportionately impact our low-income neighbors. Housing. Our legal aid covers landlord-tenant disputes as well as foreclosure prevention counseling, all with the aim of avoiding homelessness. Through our reentry justice program, the clinic helps justice-involved individuals remove barriers so they can fully realize their God-given economic and civic potential. In immigration, we provide legal counsel for refugees, asylees, and immigrants. We help survivors of violent crime and domestic abuse get their lives back on track. And finally, we help those with tax issues navigate the complexities of the IRS. For us, justice means making sure that our marginalized low-income neighbors have access to right judgments from courts, as well as right relationships with people, with governments, and with God through Jesus Christ. We demonstrate the love of Christ through our work. We come alongside our neighbors, we do not condescend. We love sacrificially, we do not seek out only what's convenient. We live incarnationally, we are in our clients' neighborhoods. The way we serve our clients comes out of a rich and meditative reading of Jesus' ministry on earth. We love the marginalized with deep concern and gentleness, and we advocate with tremendous ferocity when there is injustice against them. For more than 27 years, we've fought the legal barriers that keep most of our vulnerable neighbors from their God-given potential, working for justice so that our whole community can flourish. Now that you know a little more about the clinic, I'd like to encourage you to partner with us and our mission. The clinic's heart and driving force comes from Micah 6:8, which Jeff referenced earlier. Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly. Now, do justice, that's a verb, do. It's not passive, but active. We're called to get out there in the arena and do justice, not just believe in it. The clinic recently offered a book study, and I know some of you participated in it. We discussed Timothy Keller's book, Generous Justice, How God's Grace Makes Us Just. In it, he writes, most people know that Jesus came to bring forgiveness and grace. Less well known is the biblical teaching that a true experience of the grace of Jesus Christ inevitably motivates people to seek justice in the world. I know that nuance was lost on me. I'm sure, however, it wasn't lost on Father Boyle, as you'll hear about later. But now that I know it, I can't be idle. I am particularly compelled by this point made by Keller. When the Spirit enables us to fully understand what Christ has done for us, the result is a life poured out in deeds of justice and compassion for the poor. A life poured out in deeds and justice and compassion. I just love that. So this begs the question, how can each of us pour out our lives in deeds of justice and compassion for those in need, particularly in these times? The pandemic has been tough for everyone, but it's taken a disproportionate toll on our low-income neighbors. Media reports reflect the heart-wrenching stories: a rise in suffering caused by domestic abuse, the threat of homelessness through evictions, and the plight of refugees and asylees. The need for more legal aid services is great. As Jeff shared earlier, only 4% of legal issues faced by those in poverty are represented by an attorney. A study commissioned by the Indiana Bar Foundation helps us understand why. For every 10,000 low-income Hoosiers, there's only one pro bono attorney, just one. The justice gap was already great, but it has been exacerbated by the pandemic. Help us to make sure that the clinic continues to be a vital part of closing that gap by serving thousands of low-income neighbors each year. My pastor often says numbers are important. Every number has a name and every name has a story. They're important to God and they're important to the clinic as well. Your investment in the clinic has a very tangible and transformative result in people's lives. I could tell you how, but I'll leave that to Ms. Mayo and Ms. Young, whom you'll hear from later in the program. They'll share their stories much better than I can. So again, thank you for joining us this evening and for your continued support.
Thanks a lot, Amy. So I haven't known Amy too long, but maybe another picture of her heart for people. I told her yesterday as we were going through dress rehearsal, I was like, hey, just in case, my wife's been having Braxton Hicks, and we hope they're Braxton Hicks. So I don't want to scare you at all, but if anything happens in the next 24 hours and I can't make it, I'm at the hospital. And instead of her actually saying, okay, we got to find a replacement, she literally only cared about, hey, well, I hope your wife and everything's okay. So I think that's just a picture of your character, Amy, and it's a blessing. As we continue on, I'd like to direct everyone's attention to the program that should have been on your seat when you got here. So if you want to pick that program up, I'm going to give you guys some directions. So on that program, you should have that which includes the clinic's most recent annual report. And most importantly, it's going to have your very own clinic chip clip. That is a mouthful, so I'm going to try to keep that. It's a clinic chip clip. You'll want to take this annual report and chip clip home with you, but for now, we're going to take a look at the program. So if you're with us virtually, you should have received this program via email, so please have that in front of you as well. On the front of this program, you'll find a QR code, which is this fancy looking square barcode thing. You can use this to make a donation or gift at any time. Now, if you're not familiar with the QR code, they're very simple to use. What you'll do is you'll take your smartphone, open up your camera app, put it on the barcode, and a link will pop up on your phone. And once that happens, you can click on that link, and it allows you to give. So feel free to start that at any time. But we also have another 2 options to give as well. So we're also going to make a gift available by either cash or check. So if you'd like to do that, you have that option as well, and we'll collect that, and you'll have more information for that later this evening. But then last option we have is that if you like to click on the link that was given to you in the email you received today, or you can visit the page where you registered at, which that link is justice.nclegalclinic.org/JFA2021, and that should be on the screen as well. And this is also an option for you to give. So please, one of these 3 ways you can give. And if you need help at all with the QR code, just raise your hand and someone will come and assist you. And if you're joining with us virtually tonight, please take a moment to look at the chat function on Zoom. It will either be at the bottom of your screen or where it says more with 3 dots. We will use this chat feature in order to communicate tonight, so please make sure you find it. Also, it's important that your Zoom name matches the name that you registered for this event. If it doesn't, please change your name to match what you registered as. And if you need help with that, you can actually send a message to the host, which is Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic, and they can help get your name renamed as well. So whether you're joining us in person or online virtually, we invite you to also snap a photo or a selfie of the event. Now, I hope you guys did not think that in 2021, we would let you out of here without taking a selfie at some point in time and hashtagging the event. So please, if that's available for you, just take a picture or selfie to memorize this event and hashtag JFA2021. And we would love to just be able to send this on social media and let others get a taste of what we're experiencing here today. Tonight, we hope to send you all home, both literally and figuratively, with a fuller picture of the clinic's work and why it matters. In just a moment, we'll hear from multiple accounts from clients whose lives were transformed through the care that they received from the clinic. We'll then hear from our keynote speaker, Father Greg Boyle, who's come to us all the way from Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles, California. So of course, tonight, it's also a fundraiser where we're seeking justice for all. As I mentioned earlier, our goal is $125,000. Now, that's a big goal, but we have a big need. And as you've already seen, we're well on our way to meet that goal based off of the generous donors and generous sponsors that's given so far. So I'm actually giving some important information that's encouraging to you as well. We're starting out this evening with $47,500 in sponsorships. I'm also excited to announce that every donation that you give will be matched up to $35,000. So with our sponsorships and with the full match that'll be matched up to that amount, we'll be just a stone throw away from our goal for tonight. And with that, I want to thank all of our anonymous families that's made this match possible. And we're grateful to our so many friends of the clinic that recognize the value of providing legal services to those vulnerable in our community. So with that, if you can actually help me, give a round of applause for those donors. Thank you all. So now, those of you who've been able to come to a Justice for All gala before, you know that one of the memorable parts of this evening comes from the testimonies or stories of previous clients. We're confident you're going to experience that tonight as well. So please sit back and relax as we hear from a client who was recently served by the clinic's Housing and Consumer Justice team.
The Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic, our mission is to promote justice through legal education and legal representation as a means of demonstrating Christ's love. And we do that through areas of law that disproportionately impact the people that we serve: immigration, tax, housing. We also do reentry justice for those who are justice involved. And we also help with survivor justice. The clinic's theme verse is really the heart and driving force for everything we do. It's Micah 6:8. Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. And when I think about that, what that really means is that when we're thinking about doing justice, it means that we're getting out into our community, we're rolling up our sleeves, and we're actually doing something rather than just believing in justice. And so every day, the thing that fuels me is that I think about that particular point, And I realized that in order to really make a difference in the world, I need to be out there doing justice and finding ways to support the community.
Back in December of 2020, my oven broke down. And a lot of people don't think that's a big deal, but for me it is, because most of my meals are cooked in my oven. Because I am a diabetic, and I called maintenance. It said something about go buy a crock pot, and I just thought that that was unacceptable. Come March, numerous calls, no response, nothing from my apartment complex. I was at wit's ends in the midst of buying a house, and I was given from my real estate agent the number to the clinic, and I called the clinic.
I think when people conceptualize this, they tend to think of it in smaller terms. You've got a local landlord with a few properties who just has some simple disputes with his tenants, and we see plenty of that. But the problem is often a lot bigger. There are big companies involved with significant financial interest, and that just brings in a whole host of complicating factors. The more people that get involved, the more distant those people are, the whole thing begins to operate like a machine. And in this line of work, far too often, the amount of money someone has dictates their circumstances. It dictates the amount of justice they have access to. And that's wrong. People matter regardless of how much money they have. And so being at the Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic allows me to more directly talk to people about why they should have hope in the midst of some really difficult circumstances, to talk to them about the Imago Dei and why they matter even if they don't have resources.
April the 22nd, I received a text, and he explained to me exactly what was going on, how he had sent out some paperwork to the Indiana Housing Authority, and he was waiting on their response, and that if he hadn't had a response by the 28th, which would have been April of 2021, that he would do follow-up. Well, actually, April the 23rd, I walked in my house and I had received a new stove. And I was overjoyed. I even cried because it was just overwhelming.
We're called the Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic, and that can sound like a nice title, but it's real. The people we help are very literally our neighbors. When I drive into work, I drive past houses and apartments where we've been able to keep those people in their houses and in their apartments, and that's a really good feeling. I think anybody would feel really good by that, right? But we represent the name of Christ very literally. And so as Christians who care about people, who are supposed to love our neighbors like we love ourselves, it's really a special opportunity to be able to help the very people that I see when I drive into work, that I can wave to when I take a walk around the block after lunch.
The clinic, what it means to me and represents to me is my voice. And when I come to them and I give them my thoughts and what's going on, that's my voice going through them, and they're speaking for me. That's like, it's not taking my problems or my troubles, it's taking what's right, doing the right thing. And that's what I found here, is that they do the right thing, they get your voice out there, they get you heard, and they get results. And I just want to say to all the people that has donated, I am one that y'all have helped. And without y'all, I wouldn't have received the help that I got. It's overwhelming that these places are here. And I want to say thank you.
We hear all the time from our clients who tell us they come to us at the rock bottom of their life. They're out of options. They see no hope. They don't even know where to begin. And so our hope at the clinic is that when they come to us, we walk alongside them, we show them hope. The work that we do for them is much more than transactional, but rather transformational, and really demonstrating that they have a friend in the world and a hope beyond their circumstances. For For those of you who are considering a call to action to engage and partner with the clinic, I'd say you're welcome here. 2 years ago, I was considering the same thing, and that's when I decided to apply and work at the clinic full-time. I knew I wanted to dedicate my life to kingdom work. And I'd say if you're ready for that call, we would welcome you here. Not only would we welcome you, we know that what you do has an impact on the community and is a great return on investment. So when you give $1 at the clinic, you're giving much more than $1. You're giving hope to someone who's hopeless and vision to see something beyond their circumstances.
So something that was said in that video really struck me. The sister said that I felt that they were speaking for me. They were being a voice for me. Do you guys know that you being a part, you are helping give a voice to those who are often voiceless? This is the powerful part of playing a part in the work that's happening at the clinic, and it's a wonderful privilege. So with that, we're gonna look at our goal actually that we're working towards. We're gonna have on the screen a thermometer to kind of track where we're at. And I wanna actually share that the cost to resolve the average legal issue at the clinic is actually about $500. So think about that. Each case is about $500. That means that this $125,000 raised at this event could serve more than 250 members of our community. That's 250 people that you're providing for a voice who feel they do not have one. Even better than that, according to 2017 analysis by the Coalition for Court Access, Indiana legal aid agencies like the clinic, they return $6.70 for every $1 invested. This means that every $500 gift tonight, roughly the cost of an average case type, essentially has the impact of $3,350 in return value to the community. So think about that. That's quite the return on investment. So as a reminder, you can give at any time throughout the night with the QR code on your program. You also have the link, and later on, we'll also collect cash and checks. You are being a voice to the voiceless. But for now, I want to introduce you to another amazing client who's experienced a blessing from this clinic as well, and the life-giving power for free legal services to those in the community. So with me, please welcome Ms. Kimberly Young.
Good evening. Hello, my name is Kimberly Young, and I'm a client of the Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic. And thank you for having me here today to share my story. Early on in my life, I experienced a lot of tragedies. My first daughter passed away suddenly at only 3 months. Right after that, my mother was killed. I didn't know how to deal with these heartbreaks, so I turned to drugs and alcohol. Then I began to shoplift to fuel my addiction, and I found myself in and out of prison. My family and friends were losing respect for me, and I had lost respect for myself. I was in a vicious cycle that I knew would only lead to more prison and death. Then one day, during my last prison sentence, I decided to make a change. It was on Mother's Day. This story still brings tears to my eyes, so bear with me. Everybody was opening cards from their children. I had received nothing. I decided that moment that I had to turn my life around, not only for me, but for my daughters, 2 are here today. I never had a chance to have a relationship with my mom, so I really wanted a relationship with my kids. So I said to myself, this would be my last time in prison, and it was. I got myself in a faith-based church and joined a Bible study. I found a great guy to live my life with, and we got married. I regained the trust of my children. I got clean from drugs and alcohol, and I never looked back. I'm a firm believer in God, and He is a God of second chances. My grandmother taught me that even as small as a mustard seed of faith, it would carry me through. So I chose faith and I choose life. And God has been doing wonderful things for me. My daughters are strong, sufficient women. I've been working as a care engagement specialist for over 7 years. But my criminal record was the last thing that was tying me to my past. It was like a dark cloud hanging over my head. I was always looking over my shoulder, worried about how my record would hold me back. I couldn't get a better apartment. I tried to volunteer in my community, but I was turned down because of my criminal record. I wanted to apply for a promotion on my job, but I was scared because of my record. I knew I had so much more to give. Then one day I learned about the expungement help desk ran by the Neighborhood Christian Clinic. I visited that help desk, and the people there were a godsend. They did everything they could to help me. I saved my money to pay my expungement filing fees, and several weeks ago, my expungement was granted. I was so overjoyed. Thank you. I was so overjoyed and in tears. It was like a weight that had been lifted over from my shoulders. Thank you, Jesus, I shouted out right there in that office. I'm free. My past no longer holds me back. And to that, I give God the glory. I wanted to show my children, my grandson, my family, my community, that if you work hard enough, anything is possible. And you should never let your trouble of your past determine your future. The Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic team helped me to do that. So I want to ask you today, please give to the clinic so that more people like me can be free from their past. Thank you so much for your support. By supporting the clinic, you are changing lives like mine.
Thank you, Miss Kim. So we got to talk a little bit at the dress rehearsal, and I ended up learning that I actually grew up in a similar place that she did, not too far around the corner. And even just kind of hearing a little bit of your story, I'm asking, could I call you Aunt Kim from here on out? Because I feel like we related. But powerful story, and just a blessing to be able to hear and see God's work through the clinic. So as we continue on, we're going to continue on with the evening. I have the privilege now of introducing tonight's keynote speaker. We're going to hear from a New York Times best-selling author. And whenever I say that, I feel like we all need to pause and say, okay, this is serious now. A New York Times best-selling author and the founder and executive director of the largest gang intervention, rehabilitation, and re-entry program in the world. After witnessing the devastating impact of gang violence in Los Angeles in the 80s, Father Greg Boyle and his parish and community members adopted what was a radical approach at that time. Now, what is that radical approach, as you may ask? Seeing gang members as human beings. And as you can guess, in doing this, it changed and it impacted many. So in 1988, they started what would eventually become Homeboy Industries, which employs and trains former gang members in a range of social enterprises and provides critical service to thousands of men and women who walk through its doors seeking a better life. Father Boyle has since received the California Peace Prize, and he's been inducted into the California Hall of Fame. In 2014, President Obama named him a champion of change. And in 2017, he received our very own University of Notre Dame's Laetier Medal, the oldest honor given to American Catholics. So if his books and his is just a picture of the wisdom and compassion of Christ-likeness that he has, I know that you are in for a treat from what he shares tonight. So please join me in welcoming Father Greg Boyle.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and God's blessings on baby number three. It's a privilege. All pastors and ministers put a watch down, and then proceed never to consult it for the rest of the evening. don't know if you've ever noticed that. It's a real privilege to be here, and I strongly support the work of the clinic, and encourage you all to go to the barcode and pull out your checkbooks. I apologize if some of you have heard me speak before. It happens, you know, YouTube is kind of the bane of my existence. You know, people look, you know, I heard you on that or whatever it was. You know, once I was invited to speak to a foster grandparent gathering one summer. Well, I had spoken to them, the same group, the summer before. I don't know why they invited me 2 times in a row. And after the second summer, after the talk, a woman came up to me, a foster grandmother, and I think she liked the talk. She had big tears in her eyes, and she grabbed both my hands, and she said, "I heard you last year. It never gets better." So kind of hoping she misspoke there. Well, there's a vision that kind of brings you here virtually or in person, and that's a vision of wanting the world to look differently than it currently does, and the clinic does that. It puts first things recognizably first, and it lives as though the truth were true. And it represents a God that's spacious and expansive, the God who loves us without measure and without regret. Thousands and thousands of gang members at Homeboy Industries have taught me the spaciousness of our God, because sometimes we settle for a God that's quite small rather than holding out for the God that we actually have. Once I say Catholic services in a variety of detention facilities, and I was at one once at a juvenile hall, and I was up 500 gang members pretty much in a gym, and I was vested in my Alban, my stole, and I was sitting there, and they had these little sheets that they handed out, and it has the readings in English and in Spanish on both sides, and I just rested it on my lap, and a kid came up to do the first reading, and I just closed my eyes to listen to the word being proclaimed, and the second kid came up to do the responsorial psalm, reading from the psalm, and I had my eyes closed, and he had kind of an overabundance of confidence, and he said, looking out at the crowd, "The Lord is exhausted." And I said, "What the hell?" And it was, "The Lord is exalted." And I remember thinking at the time, wow, that's way better. Because, you know, you are parents or you're godparents, and you know what the good tired is. You know, you're exhausted. It's extensive. You're outside of yourself. You could not love your kids or grandkids more. We want to reflect the kind of God we have. As my friend Mirabai Starr, who's a mystic and a writer, says, once you know the God of love, you fire all the other gods. And somehow we're feeling ourselves invited, and through your work and your support of the clinic, to imagine a circle of compassion, and then imagine nobody standing outside that circle. You're being invited to dismantle the barriers that exclude. Mother Teresa diagnosed the world's ills correctly when she suggested that the problem in the world is that we've just forgotten that we belong to each other. So how do we stand against forgetting that? How do we stand at the margins, because that's the only way they'll ever get erased? And we stand with the poor and the powerless and the voiceless, and we get to stand with those whose dignity has been denied and those whose burdens are more than they can bear. And we get to stand with the easily despised and the readily left out, with the demonized so that the demonizing will stop, and with the disposable so that the day will come when we stop throwing people away. And we stand at the margins and we brace ourselves because people will accuse us of wasting our time. But the prophet Jeremiah writes, "For in this place of which you say it is a waste, there will be heard again the voice of mirth and the voice of gladness, the voices of those who sing." And like Kimberly and like Yvette, those voices get heard. Jeff was referencing the covenantal relationship where God says, "As I have loved you, so must you have a preferential care and love for the widow, orphan, and the stranger." And God identifies these folks as the ones who know what it's like to have been cut off. And because they have suffered in this particular way, God thinks these happen to be our guideposts to lead us to the kinship of God, where there is no us and them, there's just us. Well, Homeboy Industries was started a long time ago in 1988 when I was pastor of the poorest parish in the city of Los Angeles, nestled in the middle of 2 public housing projects. We had 8 gangs at war with each other, making it the place of the highest concentration of gang activity according to the LAPD. I buried my first young person killed because of this sadness in 1988. And a month ago, I buried my 250th. Not all from that community, but I run a large gang intervention program, so I get asked to do this. We started a school, we started a jobs program, and now we're the largest gang intervention, rehab, and reentry program on the planet. So 15,000 folks a year walk through our doors trying to reimagine their lives. Everyone who walks through our doors comes with what psychologists would call a disorganized attachment. Mom was either frightening or frightened, and you can't calm yourself down if you've never been soothed. And so they're held there. If it's true enough that a traumatized person will find their way to causing trauma, it's equally true that a cherished person will be able to find their way to the joy there is in cherishing themselves and other people. And so they transform their pain so they don't have to transmit it anymore, and they experience palpable healing in community. And then they leave us after 18 months, and they're resilient as never before, and the world will throw at them what it will, but this time it won't topple them. You don't go to the margins to make a difference. You go to the margins so that the folks at the margins make you different. Years ago, I was in Houston. I gave a talk, and afterwards, a former gang member, felon who'd been to prison and working with gang members in the streets of Houston sort of pleaded with me, and he said, "How do you reach them?" Meaning gang members. And I found myself saying to him, "Well, for starters, stop trying to reach them. Can you be reached by them? Can you allow your heart to be altered?" The homies at Homeboy Industries always say, "We're used to being watched, but we're not used to being seen." The Buddhists say, "O nobly born, remember who you really are." We want to see people and know them so that we can love them. But the principal suffering of the poor throughout history and throughout Scripture is shame and disgrace. How do you reach in and dismantle this message of shame? You at Homeboy were kind of allergic to the notion of holding the bar up and asking folks to measure up. Instead, we hold the mirror up and we tell them the truth. We tell them that they are exactly what God had in mind when God made them. And then they become that truth, they inhabit that truth, and no bullet can pierce it, no prison walls can keep it out and death can't touch it because it's huge. It's interesting at translations, you know, Jeff, for Micah, it said love, kindness. And then Amy said, her translation said love, mercy. And I read one recently that said love, goodness. And you see the unshakable goodness in a person, and then you are seeing as God sees. But in the Acts of the Apostles, it has an interesting line. It says simply, and awe came upon everyone. And it suggests that the measure of health in any community at all, including here in Indianapolis, may well reside in our ability to stand in awe at what the poor have to carry, rather than stand in judgment at how they carry it. So I remember a number of years ago, I was invited to Richmond, Virginia to speak to 600 social workers, and it's what we call in the biz a gang in-service. So 9 to 5 social workers commandeer a hotel ballroom, and they get credits, and they have keynotes and workshops and breakout sessions. So, you know, they invited me, and I figured for like a keynote or something, and so I said yes, and I bought my ticket. Well, a week before I was to fly, I pulled out the original letter inviting me, and to my horror, I discovered that I was to be the only speaker from 9 to 5 all damn day, you know, and I said to myself what the homies often say, oh, hell no, I'm not gonna be the only speaker, you know, and so I invited 2 homies in, Jose and Andre, and they were in our 18-month training program, gang members, you know, and they were like in their 9th month, and I sit them down and I said, look, at the end of the week, you're flying with me to Richmond, Virginia. I'd like you to get up in front of 600 social workers and tell your stories. Take your time, because we got a long-ass day to fill. Well, I'd never heard their stories, and Jose gets up first, and I suppose he was like 25 years old, and he had been to prison, tattooed. At that juncture, he was at Homeboy, he was very much, had become a very valued member of our substance abuse team, a man solid in his own recovery, and now he's helping younger homies and homegirls with their addiction issues. But, you know, he'd been to prison, but he also had a long stretch of time as a homeless man, an even longer stretch as a heroin addict. And he gets up in front of 600 social workers and he says, I guess you could say my mom and me, we didn't get along so good. I think I was 6 when my mom looked at me and she said, why don't you just kill yourself? You're such a burden to me. Well, 600 social workers audibly gasped. And then he says, it sounds way worser in Spanish, he said to them, you know, and we got whiplash going from gasped to laugh. And then he continued, I think I was 9 when my mom drove me down to the deepest part of Baja California, and she walks me up to an orphanage and she knocks on the door, and the guy comes to the door and she says, I found this kid. And she left me there for 90 days until my grandmother could get out of her where she had dumped me, and my grandmother came and rescued me. My mom beat me every single day of my elementary school years with things you could imagine and a lot of things you couldn't. Every day my back was bloodied and scarred. In fact, I had to wear 3 t-shirts to school each day. First t-shirt because the blood would seep through, and the second t-shirt you could still see it. Finally, the third t-shirt you couldn't see any blood. Kids at school, they'd make fun of me. Hey, fool, it's 100 degrees. Why are you wearing 3 t-shirts? And then he stopped speaking, so overwhelmed with emotion, and he seemed to be staring at a piece of his story that only he could see. And when he could regain his speech, he said through his tears, "I wore 3 t-shirts well into my adult years because I was ashamed of my wounds. I didn't want anybody to see them. But now I welcome my wounds. I run my fingers over my scars. My wounds are my friends. After all, how can I help heal the wounded if I don't welcome my own wounds?" And awe came upon everyone. The measure of our compassion lies not in our service of those on the margins, but only in our willingness to see ourselves in kinship with them. For the truth of the matter is this: if we don't welcome our own wounds, we may well be tempted to despise the wounded. Here's my hard pitch for the clinic. The clinic wants to be the front porch of the house we're all invited to live in, a place of kinship and connection, the beloved community. And how do we invite people then to obliterate once and for all the illusion that we are separate? And so I invite you with all my heart to pledge and to write a check and to go to your barcode and support the clinic. Let me contextualize that a little bit as I conclude. Once I spoke at a huge mega Christian church, and it was big jumbotrons that reminded me of how bald I was, and 10,000 people. And I told stories and such, and afterwards a woman came up to me and she said, "You know, your stories are all well and good. There's only one question," she said. "Do you bring gang members to Christ?" I said, "No. They bring me to Christ." And then she got kind of a little bit more frustrated with me, and she said, "The real question is, how much time do you spend each day at Homeboy Industries, you know, praising God?" And I didn't know what to say. So I said, "All damn day." And I don't think she liked that answer very much. But it begs this question: what kind of praise does our exhausted God have any interest in? So a number of years ago, my alma mater, Gonzaga University in Spokane, Washington, decided to force the incoming freshman class to read my book against their will. And so they said, "Would you come up and speak?" And they were going to have a big Tuesday night, thousands of people in this huge place. And I said, "Sure." And they asked me to bring 2 homies. And so I do this a lot of times, you know, and I always bring homies who've never flown before, and they're, you know, panicky and afraid. But I never brought a homie who was more terrified than this kid, Mario. I brought Mario and Trayvon. And Mario was just absolutely in panic mode. He was hyperventilating, you know, like, and we hadn't even, you know, boarded the plane yet. And we were at Burbank Airport, which is a kind of smallish airport, and you don't enter the plane on that big hermetically sealed chute, that ramp thing. You walk out onto the tarmac and you climb up the stairs like you're the president, and they have stairs at the front and stairs at the back, and I'm sitting there next to Mario trying to calm him down, and I can see out on the tarmac, our flight crew and flight attendants have arrived, and they're schlepping up the steps. And two female flight attendants both have very large cups of Starbucks coffee, and they're schlepping up those steps. And Mario goes, "When are we going to board the plane?" I said, "Well, you know, as soon as they sober up the pilots." There they go now. Perhaps I shouldn't have said that. And I should tell you that Mario, in the 33-year history of Homeboy Industries, is the most tattooed individual who's ever worked there. He's just all sleeved out, up down to his fingertips, neck blackened with the name of his gang, head shaved, covered in tattoos, forehead, cheeks. Incredible. And so at one point, I'm walking him through the airport to calm him down before we board, and I'm noticing it's like the parting of the Red Sea. Mothers are clutching their kids a little more closely, and people are stepping to the side, and I'm thinking, wow. Well, if you were to go to Homeboy tomorrow and ask anybody there who's the kindest, most gentle soul there, they would say Mario. He can find the goodness in people, and he loves what he finds there. And the day won't ever come when I have more courage, or I am more noble, or I'm closer to God than he is. So we get to Gonzaga, and there's a big talk Tuesday night, but what they don't tell you during the day is they have like 93 other talks, you know, like in all these classes, and you're being trotted around. And I tell these guys to get up and talk, and I'll mainly talk at night. And they were, especially Mario, quite terrified, but they did a good job. Stories of terror and torture and violence, and honest to God, if their stories had been flames, you'd have to keep your distance, otherwise you'd get scorched. I would not have survived a single day of either of their childhoods. So the evening talk came, and I coaxed the two of them to get out there before me and just each do a 5-minute snapshot before I speak, so that I can include them in the question and answer period afterwards. And again, they were terrified because it was really standing room only. And I get up and I do my 40 minutes or whatever. And then I call them to stand on either side of me, and I go, "Yes, questions." "Yes, ma'am." And a woman stands, and she says, "Yeah, I got a question. It's for Mario." First question out the gate. And Mario is a tall, skinny drink of water, and he steps up to the microphone and he clutches it. "Yes," and he's just terrified. And she says, "Well, Mario, you say you're a father and you have a son and a daughter who are both about to enter their teenage years. What wisdom do you impart to them? You know, what advice do you give them?" And Mario closes his eyes and he clutches the microphone with even more intensity, and you can just sense that he's getting a hernia trying to come up with whatever the hell he's going to say, and he can barely hold back this trembling that seems to be taking him over, when suddenly he squeaks out, "I just..." And as soon as he says those two words, he rushes back to the refuge of his microphone clutching solitude, and he closes his eyes more intensely. And now he's really losing the battle with tears, but he wants to get this entire sentence out. "I just don't want my kids to turn out to be like me." And there's silence until the woman who asked the question stands, and now it's her turn to cry, and she says, "Why wouldn't you want your kids to turn out to be like you? You are loving, you are kind, you are gentle, you are wise. I hope your kids turn out to be like you." And 1,000 total perfect strangers stand and they will not stop clapping. And all Mario can do is hold his face in his hand, so overwhelmed with emotion that this room full of strangers had returned him to himself. And it's equally certain that everyone standing had been returned to themselves. And I think that's the only praise our exhausted God has any interest in. We are invited, and in your support of the clinic, to take seriously what Jesus took serious. Fortunately for us, there are only 4 things. They're big, but only 4. Inclusion, nonviolence, unconditional loving kindness, and compassionate acceptance. I invite you to support the clinic because they take seriously what Jesus took seriously. And so together we imagine a community of compassion and kinship such that God, in fact, might recognize it. And we stand with the widow and the orphan and the stranger because that's where the joy is. And we stand at the margins because that's the only way they'll get erased. And we stand there to allow our hearts to be altered and to be reached. And soon enough, we cease to care if anyone accuses us of wasting our time. For in this place of which you say it is a waste, there will be heard again the voice of mirth and the voice of gladness, the voices of those who sing. Thank you very much.
Bring us home, bring us home.
All right, so Father Boyle, it makes sense how you got all those accolades behind your name. Even everything that you just said, one word kind of stood out to me: authenticity. One of the things that he mentioned was we don't go to the margins to make a difference. We go to the margins to make the difference in ourselves. And this is what we're hoping as you give, it is making a difference in yourselves as it helps to make a difference in others' lives as well. So as you've heard tonight, boundless compassion, radical kinship, treating others as human beings made in the image of God, and striving to seek justice for those who has been placed in the margins. These are all ways we can work together towards the flourishing of our society in a way that honors God. We hope that these stories of lives transformed will move you to make a difference in the community today. One way to do that is by giving a gift right now to support the Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic. Every single donation helps to continue to provide free legal services to low-income families across the state of Indiana. Without your help, without your prayers, your financial assistance, we could not do what we do. And remember, not only is your blessing going to be a blessing, but whatever you give will be matched up to $35,000. That's double, that's twice the impact, no matter what you're able to give. So at this time, we're going to have our clinic volunteers walk the aisles with their neighborhood house-shaped containers to collect your cash and checks, which you can stick in this envelope that's provided on the program packets. And if you're online or with us in person as well, remember, you can also use the QR code to give. Open up your phone, use the camera app, put it on that barcode and a link will pop up. And also you can utilize the justice.nclegalclinic.org/JFA2021 to also give as well. And that was emailed to you. We also have it on the screen. We're so close to reaching our goal, and I know that you guys, your hearts have been churned from the stories you've heard and the compelling message that we just heard from Father Boyle. Please know that your gift tonight really does make a difference in the lives of our neighbors. Thank you for your generosity. So we're going to have some music playing as you guys continue to give. I'm going to encourage you guys to step into these margins, not just to transform others' lives, but as Father Boyle says, to impact yourself as well. And then we'll continue, and I'll give you an update of where we are with our goal. Oh. All right, you guys, as you can see on the screen, we have hit our goal. So I'm super excited to see that. Just think about this. That's 250 real life people whose lives will be impacted because of your generosity. Matter of fact, I'm gonna have to give y'all a round of applause again. Thank you, guys. Thank you for all your incredible generosity. We're so grateful to everyone who donated this evening, that you're able to assist people like Miss Mayo and Miss Young who shared their stories earlier. And if you're not able to give tonight, but you still like to give to the clinic sometime in the future, we will not turn that down as well. You can always visit the website at nclegalclinic.org/donate to give donations as well. Now, in just a moment, we will release you for the after event that you may have signed up for. There's going to be coffee, delicious desserts in the main lobby for those who are with us in person. But if you signed up or registered for the virtual VIP with Father Boyle, that will start in just a second, and you'll be sent into a private breakout room on Zoom to be able to talk and meet and greet him as well. Now, when we leave here tonight, we hope you take your annual report with you as well. It's filled with a lot of helpful information about the clinic, and we also want to invite you to stop outside at the table right outside for some fun gifts that you guys can purchase as well. It has these cool t-shirts, some tote bags, books that we love, and it also includes Father Boyle's tattoos on the heart, and also some other fun things as well. So please stop outside at the table for some things that you may want to take home with. Thank you again so much for those who's blessed us and made this tonight possible and the blessing that it is. Also want to give a special thank you to the sponsors, Barnes and Thornburg, College Park Church, Tabernacle Presbyterian Church, Bose McKinney and Evans, Accent Coatings, Wagner Reese, and Faygre Drinker. Also, a special thanks to the amazing volunteers that helped make tonight possible, and also Marquise and the Crane Center for hosting us for tonight. Actually, can we give you guys a round of applause as well? Most importantly, thank you for being a part of the clinic family and Team Justice. Thank you for supporting our neighbors who are in need. And also thank you for giving sacrificially to do what the Lord calls us to do in Micah, to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with Him. We hope you've enjoyed tonight here at the Justice for All Gala, and we'd love for you to stand with us and be united in the years to come. So in closing, before we release you for dessert or the virtual meet and greet, and for those who need an early bedtime, we're gonna let you out as well. We first wanna bring up a former client, clinic client, and also current volunteer who happens to also be a professional speaker, the Miss April Irvin Arthur, who will lead us in our benediction. So please give a round of applause as she comes here with the benediction.
Thank you, Jeff. What a blessing to come together this evening. Such inspirational stories of transformation and God's grace, all made possible by the Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic. And such an inspirational and encouraging message from Father Greg Boyle. I have been blessed to hear Father Boyle on another occasion, and this evening I was just as inspired by his extraordinary gifting and servant leadership, and I think you all would agree with me. Our exhausted God is very pleased with Father Boyle. I hope our exhausted God is pleased with me too. I'm sure each of you also join me in sincere gratitude for the important work of the Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic. I am truly grateful to be a part of this community that provides such pivotal resources to so many in need. I reiterate the thanks that's already been given for each of you who continue to invest in the work of the clinic. Your support and financial contributions ensure this invaluable work continues throughout our community. As we leave this evening, I offer a blessing that my pastor shares with our church each week. And during this current time in our lives, our country, and our world, one that I hold dearly to my heart. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you, and may the Lord grant you his peace now and forevermore. And may the Lord continue to bless the work of the Neighborhood Christian Legal Clinic. Amen. Thank you. Again, thank you all so very much for promoting Justice for All by attending tonight's gala, and please stick around, as already has been shared, for coffee and dessert if you are in person, or for the meet and greet if you are a virtual VIP. Have a blessed evening.